Welcome to our yoga practice. Tools we might need for today's practice could be a block and a blanket, but really there's nothing specifically needed. If you prefer to use a cushion, that's fine too. If no blanket is required, that's okay as well. While we will move quite mindfully as usual, I'd ask you to begin the practice lying down on the backs. And if it is also available to you, you might, when you're lying down, touch the soles of your feet together with your knees bent, and then let the knees roll out to the sides. So beginning in Supta Baddha Konasana, a reclined bound angle pose. As your knees fall out to the sides, please acknowledge that it might feel differently according to where you place your feet. You could draw your feet up towards you for a more intense feeling, perhaps. And you could slide your feet further away from you. And sometimes, if you, for example, have lower back concerns, that distance between the feet and the rest of your body might make you feel more comfortable or at ease. However, sometimes it just doesn't feel right. You could also support yourself here under the legs if you had a few extra cushions or blocks. And of course, could you at any time raise your knees and release from the shape. So if possible, leaving knees falling out, maybe arms relaxing away from the body, perhaps snuggling your shoulders down to the floor, maybe even closing your eyes. And if this is challenging today, then look up towards a spot on the ceiling. Beginning by bringing awareness to yourself as you arrive with your senses within your own vehicle, the physical body. Noticing if the form you've explored for yourself is right, or whether it needs support or even release. I would love to instill the idea, and with that my intention for the practice, renewal. When we think of what we create for ourselves in the practice, it is often a sense of renewal that we're after, managing our energies, creating something new. That also applies to our lives, as mentioned several times. What we do here on the mat has a direct relation into how we live our lives, how we approach ourselves. So when we think about renewal, it is a potential desire or intention to create something new. But for that, even to find some space, it's required that we release something for it. And it could be that you would like to find a new habit, maybe a healthier habit or routines. Old ideas will have to be left for this. And it could be anything else that you will choose to work with today. Now you found your position. Perhaps my words guided you to a more personal intention for this practice or your day. And if my words did, if you find a sense of renewal within yourself, perhaps form a statement that suggests that this renewal has already taken place. If that's for you, repeating it mentally 3 times to yourself. Once you have done so, or even just rested, we will move on into a breathing practice against the grain or Viloma Pranayama. This breathing practice involves me counting for you for a bit. I will also perhaps set you free to count yourself. However, sometimes counting isn't quite right. In that case, ignore the counting, go along with your breath. There's a hold of the breath, although it is more briefly. You might skip that altogether if it's not for you. We'll begin with the 3-part inhalation. So we're breathing in for three, and then another 3. Then there's a pause, and then we will breathe out from the top down back to the belly area for a count of 9. If this count is too long for you in general, come with me in the general pattern, but perhaps let your breath have a different length. So when you're ready, let's start together. Breathing into the belly for 3, 2, 1. Lower ribs, 3, 2, 1. Up to the collarbones, 3, 2, 1. Perhaps your pause, holding the breath in the body. And then breathing out from the collarbones to the belly for 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And breathing into the belly for 3, 2, 1. Lower ribs, 3, 2, 1. Collarbones, 3, 2, 1. Perhaps a pause. Then breathing out from the collarbones downward for 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let your breath rest and just simply breathing naturally, if possible, through your nostrils. And while you take this pause, you might also observe yourself. Going for another round. Breathing into the belly for 3, 2, 1. Lower ribs, 3, 2, 1. Collarbones, 3, 2, 1. Maybe a pause. Then out from the top for 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back into the belly for 3, 2, 1. Lower ribs, 3, 2, 1. Collarbones, 3, 2, 1. Pause. Out from the top for 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, breathing naturally, observing yourself. I suggest you practice on your own for 2 rounds now and come back to releasing, observing yourself and breathing naturally, beginning with the breath into the belly. Acknowledging how these altogether 3 rounds of Viloma Pranayam might have affected you. If your knees are still out towards the sides, guide them up. If you've extended your legs, please bend your knees again. Now take your feet out as wide as the mat and let the knees fall inwards. You might also briefly rest your hands upon your belly while leaving your shoulders down on the ground. From outward to slight inward rotation. On the next in-breath, then opening your arms out to the sides, separating your knees. And we're now working with both in and outward rotation as you begin to let your knees roll at first a little from side to side, and assessing this now movement within your pelvis back. You might expand into the movement as you go about it. Letting knees move from side to side. And if you now find the neck could do with some movement too, let the head come along either with your knees or opposite to the knees. Allowing knees then to roll over to the right for a brief pause. If your head is turned, fine. If it's looking upward, fine too. Drawing head to center and then the knees. And letting things roll to the left. Whatever your head wants to do is fine according to your own feeling in the neck. With knees resting to the left, now rolling your upper body to the left too. Bringing the hand down into the floor to assist yourself rising to a seat. From sitting, coming into kneeling position. So you might have your knees cushioned. I will draw a blanket here so my knees are comfortable. Hands might rest on the floor, the knees about hip distance apart. Keeping your hips stuck over your knees, walk your hands forward. Some of you might be able to extend both arms forward, perhaps even resting the head down. My head is far off the floor, so I will use a block to assist myself. Letting your chest sink down towards the mat for Anahatasana, or heart opening form. While the arms might be extended, your hips are directly stuck over your knees. Each out breath, you might get that feeling of your chest lowering further down towards the floor. Perhaps that leads us into our sense of renewal, being aligned with your heart center. Let's slowly sink all the way down towards the heels, perhaps even allowing your arms to lengthen along the sides of the body. The forehead might rest down onto the ground, letting the shoulders become heavy. Balasana, child's pose. The back of the heart here might open. Extending your arms now back towards the front end of the mat. A breath in as you lift your hips back up over your knees. You might keep the block by the side. And as you take your left hand, palm facing up underneath you, breathe in. And with the out breath, slide that hand out to thread the needle position. If you find your head doesn't easily touch the floor, use the block underneath. And you might also use the block if your shoulder feels rather sore bearing weight. Now come to a half Anahatasana as well by extending your right arm forward. Perhaps even leaving your right arm extended. Right hand slides back down onto the floor. A breath in to lift and stand on all fours as you breathe out. And inhale now to stay neutral or lift tail and gaze. And exhale to push the floor away, cat position. Inhaling neutral or back bend. Exhaling, rounding the spine. Repeat just once more, breathing in and out for the cat. On your in-breath now, arrive in a neutral spine. Place the right hand down underneath you, palm facing up. On the out-breath, sliding the hand across as you might use either the floor or a block to rest your head upon. Shoulder might be on the floor or at least your arm is restful. And if available, extending your left arm all the way forward to the front side of the mat for that feeling of a half heart opening shape as well. If you're able to extend your left arm all the way, keep it active. Long arm, restful in the twist, however. Sliding your left hand back firmly onto the mat. Push into the floor and land again on all fours. You might place the block for a moment to the side. As you breathe in, choose again to stay in neutral spine or come to your back bend, tail gaze lifting, and a breath out for all to round into the cat. Let's repeat for 2 more, breathing in and out to round. Still the option on the in-breath of neutral spine or back bending, and out breath to round into the cat. You might, from that rounded cat, tuck the toes under and sit your bottom back down towards your heels. You might lightly sway here with the pelvis rocking over those tucked under toes. And there's a good likelihood to experience that as a stretch through your feet. As you breathe in, coming back to all fours, please feel free to stay like this or lean a bit forward, then raise your knees off the ground and come to a downward facing dog instead. No matter what you've chosen to do, standing on all fours or being in a down dog, find movement here in the down dog through the legs and the hips, perhaps shoulders and arms, and doing similar actions if you're on all fours. Perhaps we will leave the blanket, if you're choosing to use one, where it is, and either walking the feet or the knees between the hands as we rise in an out breath towards standing. Give the shoulders a lift and a shrug back, turning the palms of your hands forward, standing perhaps at about hip distance apart, inner heels drawing inwards. As we stand tall in mountain pose, a breath in to raise the arms up, drawing the palms together, bending the knees, and then out breath to fold down into a forward bend. Your hands might touch the floor or go against your shins, half lift. On the out breath, then stepping your right foot far back, lowering the knee down towards the floor. As you might lean a little bit forward, please mind that the front knee stays over your ankle joint and perhaps wiggling the foot into position. I would love for you to lengthen the spine. So if the arms feel a bit short, you might use a block underneath. Lifting the heart lightly forward while at the same time drawing this left hip lightly backwards and sinking down into the hips. Align your neck so that is in alignment with the rest of your spine here too. Either your fingertips are down or you're resting on a block. As you then inhale, lift the sole of the foot, draw your hands a little bit back or even your block, and slide your heel just a tad bit further forward. We will start today with the foot in a deep flexion, drawing it in towards you. Lengthen your spine as you inhale, and then folding towards the leg. You can still use the block if you prefer, or you might have your hands on the floor. Drawing your foot back while you keep leaning towards your extended leg. And then we'll start experimenting with the foot. You might point it, noticing how that changes the sensations in the leg. You might floint it and press out from the ball of the foot. A breath in now to land on the back with a bent knee on the front foot. And a breath out to step the knee back down. We're on all fours. On your exhale, round away, cat position. The inhale, neutral spine or back bending. Out breath, rounding again into the cat. Inhaling, neutral or back bend. Exhaling again into the cat. Your choice again to stay here or tuck your toes under and lift the knees for a down dog. Little walks with knees or feet to the front side end of the mat. Forward bend. Out breath here to round up through your spine, rising to stand. Give the shoulders a lift and a shrug as you breathe out to return to Tadasana, mountain pose, drawing inner heels toward each other. On the inhale, lifting the arms again, maybe the gaze comes up to. Touch the palms, soften your knees, and out breath, forward bend. Inhaling, spine lengthens, half lift. Exhaling now, left foot steps far down the mat, grounding your left knee and beginning to sink forward into the hips. Front knee, keep that aligned with your ankle joint. Same options. Your hands can touch the floor here, or you might use a block. Perhaps lengthening through the spine now, while you draw the right side of the pelvis lightly back for a more solid stance on the floor. While leaning your hips in, your heart is lifting, your spine is long. As you experience, keep breathing. We will change to leaning backwards. As you lift the sole of the foot, bring your hands and or the block a little bit backwards. Slide your heel just a tiny bit out in front. Begin to flex the foot actively. It's drawing the toes towards you, lengthening the spine, breathing in. And on the out, leaning towards the leg. Whether you keep on your block or you're grounding the hands, your choice. Maintain the flexion in the foot to experience the sensations. Then change to pointing the foot and experiencing again. Then finding the middle path and floating by pushing out the ball of the foot and drawing the toes back. Then take a breath in, land on the foot and bend the knee again. I've placed my block out to the side for now and stepping the knee back, landing again on all fours. As you breathe in, hold neutral. Breathe out around the spine. Inhale, neutral or back bend. Out breath, cat position. Last round, breathing in and out to round. As you might choose to stay here, tuck the toes under, lift the knees off the floor and return to your downward facing dog. I will now remove my blanket and we'll bring our feet or knees forward again to a standing forward bend. Exhaling slowly to uncurl the spine, rising to a stance. Lift your shoulders, breathing in, and shrug them down as you return to mountain, the inner heels drawing back toward each other. With the hip distance stance, feel how this is aligning in your pelvic area. You might bring your hands onto the pelvis to feel into that sensation. While shifting right slightly to your left, lifting your right knee, breathing in. On the out breath, stepping the foot down the mat. Lunge position, soften into both knees as you sink in. Your pelvis hopefully still feeling exactly the same. As you lengthen both legs, ground your back heel, inhale, squeeze your shoulder blades, elbows back, maybe raise your gaze. There might be a light bend in the front knee as you approach a forward fold or pyramid shape. You could also, instead of hands on your waist, come back to using a block. Or you could even bring the hands upon the leg. If you find hands in the waist is good, keep squeezing elbows, shoulder blades back, and push away in the front ball of the foot. Then take a bend into the front knee, lengthen your spine forward, lift your back here. You might keep your arms or lengthen them backwards. Palms might be facing down. Some of you might like to lift the back foot and find a variation of a warrior 3. Toes are turned down, spine is long. You could choose your arms also to move out to the side if you prefer the aeroplane style. Landing your foot next to the other, reclaiming your mountain shape. Inner heels draw inwards. Let that support ripple all the way up into ease around shoulders, neck, head. Hands might come back upon the hips, checking upon the distance of the feet and the placement of the pelvis. Leaning weight slightly to your right, raising your left knee, breathing in. Stepping your foot back down onto the mat, bending both of your knees as you settle into a lunge. Feel the pelvis here. Notice whether that's still feeling very similar to the mountain shape. Then might you straighten your legs, lower the back heel. Perhaps again squeeze your shoulder blades and elbows back, lifting your heart. You might choose a light bend into the front knee as you approach a forward fold. While that knee will always stay out of the lock, the leg is rather straightening as you come forward. You might keep that squeeze of your shoulder blades and elbows. You might choose to hold onto the leg or use a block instead. Ball of the front foot, you press that firmly into the mat so that the right side of the pelvis rises again to meet the left. That within your hands, if they're still resting there, will still feel similar to the mountain form. On a breath in, start to bend your front knee. Lengthen your spine forward like you're doing a half lift. Perhaps the back heel is rising. You can keep your arms. You might lengthen them by the sides. If you've done so before, maybe palms now turning upwards. Or arms out to the side. Option then to lift the back foot off the floor. If you do, please flex that foot. Turn your pelvis to face down, your toes, as well as your gaze. Warrior 3 variation. Landing your foot next to the other. Turn the hands forward. Lift tall to mountain. Inner heels drawing lightly inwards to stabilize the form. You might close your eyes or lower your gaze and begin to breathe more deeply. Let your breath expand your belly and take it all the way up to the collarbones. If you have a need to sigh, do so in a long out breath. On your next inhale, lift your gaze and your arms. Touch the palms again, soften your knees and come to a forward fold. Half lift for the in-breath. And stepping onto hands and knees on your out-breath. I will just turn myself. You can stay the way you are. Extending now your right leg out towards the side and turning the toes forward. Walking your left hand to the side so it's resting underneath your shoulder. And a breath in to reach the right arm up. Kneeling side plank. If you enjoy it, you may lift your upper leg. Then land the foot again if you raised it. Lower your arm down and let both arms swing across to the other side. Lifting now your left arm over the head. The other arm is loosely against your extended leg as you bend sideways to Parikrasana or gate pose. You might look up here with a light chin tuck, or you could choose to look down towards your extended leg. Rolling then your arm and shoulder down, resting hands back onto all fours. Swing your left foot out to the side of the mat and take your right leg back. This will end in a half pigeon. If you know this is not good for your knees or hips on the front of the body, roll to your back, left ankle to right thigh. If you're happy here, sliding the leg back, you may use a block underneath the side of your buttocks and sinking into the form. While sinking into the form might be the feeling that you have as you lower towards the mat. Keeping your pelvis here in balance. We've done a lot of that balance in the pelvis today. So you might have a good sense what that means. Not leaning to any side. Perhaps there's a support platform. Couple more breaths. Maybe a sense of what needs to go from that hip area. Then slowly drawing your knee back in, removing any props that you might have used, stepping upon your hands, and then your knees again, all four stands. Now extending your left leg out towards the side. Drawing your right hand underneath the shoulder. A breath in, perhaps the left arm is lifting. Maybe your upper leg, left leg is lifting. Maybe. Then landing your foot, releasing your arm, and coming across to the other side, where the right arm might lift over the head. If you can hold it there, please do. I will have to rest mine down, but the side bend is the same. As you extend over towards your long leg, gaze might be up or gaze might be down. Slowly rolling your arm and shoulder back forward. Now bringing your right foot across and sliding the left leg back. And the same here, if you prefer this on your back, it's right ankle now to left thigh. There's an option if you're on the front to support with a block underneath. As you surrender to the floor now, or become quite heavy and reliant on the floor to support you, still maintain balance in the pelvic area. So no preference to left or right side. What arises for you in these challenges of holds? If your intention is related to the practice, this might be a good point to reflect upon that. As you come to your forearms, then draw your back knee in and the front knee back, coming to a forearm kneeling position. Your elbows are directly underneath your shoulders. You might interlace the fingers, but if you prefer, spread the hands out onto the floor. Tucking your toes under and then stretching your hips up and back. Leave your head loosely floating away from the ground, though, rather than resting it. So the neck feels completely easy. Your shoulders might have that light stretch. If you find this is very comfortable and you would like to expand upon it, lift the knees off the floor to find a dolphin shape. Noticing, please, how the shoulders are feeling in these postures and choosing accordingly to your body's needs. The hips up high, the knees can be straight or bent. See what works best for you. You might, if you usually practice down dogs, experience a similar length coming through the back and the shoulder area, while the weight here sits all on the forearms and on the feet or the knees if you're in a baby dolphin. Allow your head to hang loosely off the floor, finding ease within that shape. And the moment it becomes less easy, you notice a strain. Bring your knees down and lift your hips up and back anyway. Continue to breathe into this light inversion. Then let your knees come back down if they aren't already. Let your hips sink back towards your heels. Your head might rest down onto a support or onto the floor, as you could return to a full child's pose if that's suitable. If suitable, your hands will be next to your feet. Your shoulders will just simply drop. The head is now resting on the floor, and you could draw it lightly in towards you to complete this rounded position. Let your breaths be deep and deliberately expanding the breath into the back of the body. Waiting for your next out breath and using that to curl up through your spine, to rise, to sit. Lift your shoulders up, give them a gentle shrug back. As you might sit over to your side, you can use as a support a blanket underneath. Perhaps a rolled up mat, and extending your legs out long in front. Your hands might come to rest on either side of your hips. You might choose to bend your knees, but do keep a flexion in the feet here, the toes pointing upwards, and use your fingertips into the ground just to sit. Shoulders are easy, spine is tall. Breathe in and you may close your eyes. Breathe out, use your fingertips to lean the straight back forward. Keeping even the neck aligned and being grateful for how far you come with a long spine. You might hold it there still and adjust your hands to come forward. From there, you take a deep breath in, maintaining the length still, and then softening into Paschimottanasana, your seated forward bend on an out breath. The legs are still the same, the feet flexed, aligning your legs. If you now choose to straighten the legs, this is up to you, but stay mindful around pelvis and lower back area and how that might impact you in other ways. If you're feeling a light stretch behind your legs, you're doing good. As you breathe slowly, you might bring the ratio to 1:2. So lengthening your out breath to double the length of your inhalation. I would always focus on a long out breath first, and then breathe in about half the length, getting the oxygen that's needed before another long, slow out breath that might guide you further into the form. And further does not mean it needs to match any image. It is how you perceive it within yourself. Staying here, 2 more breaths. You completed your 2 breaths, lifting up just to the point where the spine is long again. Your hands become again shoulder distance, and then lift right back up. I will come off my blanket, but I might prepare that for later into Shavasana. And as we will move towards the back, not yet onto it, you might arrange things around you that are relevant for your relaxation. I will slide my fingertips now underneath my buttocks and even allow my legs to extend fully. Then drawing the legs together and perhaps pointing the feet. Starting to lean into the hands. You could stay at any point, by the way. You might choose to bend both elbows and start to descend onto the forearms. Snuggling your elbows under, looking at your pointed feet. You might begin to raise your sternum. You're perfectly fine here, a version of Matsyasana, the fish. But you could also protract your chin and guide your head all the way back. If you do guide the head back, I suggest to leave it off the mat. See what feels right there for you. With less pressure upon the head, there's less pressure on the neck vertebrae. So you might enjoy them hanging out rather than compressing. Last breath in the fish. And then slowly releasing the forearms, landing the head down, landing the shoulders down, and just landing as you breathe a few times. This might not be your ideal relaxation pose. Notice if there's anything that might be required of you to serve your body. It could be to bend the knees, snuggle yourself kind of onto the floor. You might need a few other little movements, or even choosing to hug the knees in and stimulating the back by rocking slightly from side to side. These are all just options for you to choose from, finding a sense of comfort and then also of support. For your actual resting pose, you might step your feet out wide as the mat, let the knees fall in. Constructive rest. Arms are lightly away from the body. Shoulder blades are snuggled under, shoulders resting on the floor. For those of you that don't like this inward rotation, maybe your lower back is perfectly happy. You could open your legs out and extend them, toes rolling outward. This extension of the legs could happen with a bolster underneath the knees. Align your neck so the head is facing to the ceiling. either finding a steady spot up there or closing your eyes. Taking a deep, slow breath in and a long, slow breath out. As you allow yourself to settle, finding the quiet that lies within this shape. When it comes to renewal, it depends on where your focus was, match, personal, spiritual. It requires discipline to let go of the clutter that is no longer needed, old habits, old points of view. A good idea to ground yourself, as we did through this practice, to be supported when you create change. This self-caused change might guide you deeper to what you really need. You might have been procrastinating. You might work with addictions towards technology. Maybe it's negative thought patterns. Perhaps in this process, you can also look at potential outcomes that you might like from this change. As sometimes when there's no outcome inside, not saying attached to this particular one, just looking ahead what could come from this change. With the lack thereof, our minds are so powerful, they will make excuses. So while not attaching, perhaps seeing a potential outcome and embracing that with your heart. To support us in this journey of renewal, a card showed up today from the Crystal Mandala Oracle. It is the Inner Queen. It brings us empowerment. The Inner Queen exercises authority through divine female wisdom. Her empowerment is active within men and women that consciously seek to honor feeling, instinct, and intuition, to choose to live their lives according to a moral code of compassion. When the Inner Queen stirs within, judgment is replaced with empathy for your own suffering and that of others. You might take in the following as you humble yourself towards the heart, the divine. May divine love bring dignity and feminine healing presence to all beings in need. May all beings realize the fullness of their inner divine presence and become happy and free. According to divine grace and in service to the divine feminine wisdom evolving through humanity at this time. Perhaps the affirmation of this process, I rise within me, the inner queen divine speaks her wisdom into all hearts, dignity, wisdom, and love now shine. Lokha samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere attain happiness and freedom. Slowly deepening your breathing. As energy, prana enters the body again, you might choose to bring movement in or even stretch. Once you rise to sit, you might bring your hands to touch in front of the heart. Maybe lower your gaze or close the eyes. From our hearts, this space we created, we are extending our awareness toward each other with a bow. Namaste.